with a very low water content. We're going to be sticking this to the walls of this hotel. Rather than have water run off the walls, this foam, composed primarily of water, will sink into the walls and raise the fuel moisture, making it wet wood. The notion is when the fire finally comes here, we will have a situation where all these fuels on the structure are wet. And they're not just wet on the surface, they're wet deep.
Foaming is one of the new weapons being used in Idaho to save structures and stop fire movement that threatens homes to the north of Payette Lake.
Dealing with urban interface fires, I don't think there's a better feeling in the world than to walk away from a house. Everything around is black, and that house is still standing, and knowing that the reason it's there is because you did your job.
50 years ago, firefighters working these woods had to depend solely on their instincts to beat back fires. Things like monitoring wind direction by watching the flames. And they could only find hotspots by feeling around in crevices. While modern technology has not entirely replaced those immediate senses, it has added a new dimension to the battle. Infrared satellites and high-tech weather forecasting are giving firefighters a much-needed edge against Mother Nature and the Idaho Fire Complex. Richard Adams is the Forest Service Fire Director for the western region of the United States.
We've, on 2 passes of the satellite last night, we picked up kind of a little bright spot down there on your forest, and I was wondering if you had anything going on out there.
Here, infrared mapping has taken to new heights, literally. This year is the first time computers have been used to read information from satellites high above a fire. It allows for a constant tracking of the flames. And in the cases of a few fires that are left to burn in a natural way, the new technology is an eye in the sky to make sure things don't get out of control.
In average years, we have what we call prescribed natural fires. And when we allow prescribed natural fires, we have to have ways to monitor those. And this might be another technique of monitoring what's going on in terms of fire activity on prescribed natural fires within the wilderness areas.
David Prevedel is a systems specialist and operates the new technology. He must translate all this data into material for the crews near McCall.
We are downloading from this satellite system the far infrared band, which is heat sensitive.
The Idaho fires are the first real test for this latest high-tech approach. Until now, the government has only used the satellite imaging to follow hurricanes and tornadoes.
We can go in now and cut this particular area out like that from McCall down towards Boise. You can see the individual fires. The whiter or brighter the colors are is the way the fire direction is progressing.
This is exactly the information crews like the Prescott Hotshots need. And the faster all this can reach the front lines, the more confidence firefighters can have that the tactics are working. Even old-fashioned radios are a key link in the chain of communication.
If you got a freehander handy,
This is how information is disseminated to hotshots.
We're very concerned about the fire weather today. Suggest Joe bring your safety
An early morning briefing lays out the important weather information each day. The weather is responsible for most of the fires of the inland west. There are hundreds of thousands of lightning strikes in these woods every year. Not every one of them can be monitored. And often the small lightning strikes are the sparks for the huge blazes. So now the old art of infrared sensing is being put to its highest tech application. The Forest Service uses specially modified planes to monitor the spread of forest fires and transmit the material back to the main computers. There is little doubt about the devastation caused by these tremendous fires, but this technique of locating the smallest burning embers is crucial, especially during the mopping up stage of the process. Once the big tree-topping flames have been beaten down, Prevedel's technology can help the crew locate the spots that may still be hot. It's the final check before a crew is released from a fire zone.
I've already been over this area once before since this morning, so it's kind of cooled off right now, but we're just coming through it to make sure, double sure that it's out. So we got our make sure we got our barrier here so it doesn't go down into the town.
After almost 40 days, the Blackwell and Corral fires seem to be coming under control. The flames are by no means totally out, but most of the danger has passed. McCall has been saved, and so too have most of the structures and homes nearby. Hotshots are the journeyman of firefighting. They don't spend much time on any one fire, and very seldom do they ever see a fire extinguished completely. Once they finish their initial attacks and set up lines, it's often time to move on to the next hotspot.
While the major fires continue to burn here in Idaho, the fire season is in full swing in California, where the Prescott Hotshots are trying to contain a fire in Lassen National Park, which we'll see when Investigative Reports continues.
Be Safe is brought to you by the Justice Network.
For 15 years, Jared Fogle lived the all-American story. He was a household name and led the fight against obesity. But the model citizen had dark secrets that exposed him as a child predator. Pedophiles are master con artists and can hide behind the cloak of respectability. If something seems off about the way an adult interacts or becomes emotionally attached to a child, report it. It's better to be aware and be safe.
If you're over 50, did you know you could be taking advantage of everything AARP has to offer right now? Join today for just $12. Find out what 37 million AARP members already know. Benefits start instantly.
It's AARP.
Are you joining AARP?
Actually, I just did.
But is it worth it?
Well, I enrolled at 7:02, saved on concert tickets at 8:10, read a great article on investing at 9, found a sweet travel deal at 10:15. I used the caregiver finder for my dad, and done. Discounted movie tickets.
Call or go to getaarp.org to join today for just $12, and your second membership is free. And get instant access to discounts on eye care, prescriptions, savings on travel, dining, and deals from top retailers. So many ways to save. Instant resources, tools, and tips to help manage your money, maximize your health, and so much more.
So in case you're curious, I'm just recording the currents that are going through me. There's nothing I can do about it. It's throughout the apartment. Whenever they think I'm asleep, they'll thump in, either drop something, turn on this vibrating device that feels like currents are going through me. They'll constantly make noise. So that's their latest tactic, to turn something on that's hot and vibrating. Can I prove it? I'll be at the doctor.
I love the magazine. Everything in there applies to me.
Benefits for both memberships start instantly. So call or click
These people are cynical nuts. They're criminal crazy.
1-800-411-1550. That's 1-800-411-1550.
Or go to getaarp.org.
For drug-free sinus relief, experience Navage, the next big thing in nasal care. Navage is the only nose cleaner with powered suction to pull refreshing saline rinse in one nostril and out the other. Navage relieves congestion from allergies and colds naturally by flushing out allergens, mucus, dust, and germs.
I used to get so congested, but Navage cleans out all the stuff that makes me miserable so I can breathe again.
Now at CVS and Navage.com, you'll love that clean nose feeling. Are you or a loved one suffering with addiction to opiates or prescription painkillers? There is hope. Medication-assisted treatment is the proven most effective method for opiate addiction recovery. Utilizing medications such as methadone, Suboxone, and Subutex, combined with outpatient counseling therapy, you can achieve lasting recovery. We accept most insurance. Call Treatment Centers of America today.
Please call 800-562-4061. That is 800-562-4061.
Join the law firms that bring criminals to justice. Discover the complexities of the American judicial system. Watch the inner workings of prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges amidst the grim reality of backlog courts and the hardening streets of America. The prosecutors, next. The fires in Idaho are contained, but new lightning strikes have ignited dry, overgrown forests in California. This is the Lassen National Forest, and in just one day, the fire here spread from 5 to 40,000 acres. It's now a threat to the city of Chico and even smaller towns to the east of these hills. You remember Dwayne Kuhn and his team of Prescott hotshots? Well, they're here now. In fact, they have seen action in 4 fires since pulling out of the Blackwell complex in Idaho, and they've only had a few days off to go home.
Well, I used to joke when I was a smoke jumper that you had to leave your home for quite a while at times. A month and a half to 2-3 months, and sometimes we'd often joke that we'd just buy a ham bone when we got home and throw it in the backyard so the dog wouldn't bite you as a burger when you got home.
Can you hear me now?
But no one has really forgotten on the fire lines. It may be a different national forest and a different fire, but the faces are the same. A small fraternity of hotshots, smoke jumpers, and other firefighters makes the rounds and turns up at the same fires time and again.
The hotshots go out and park out here at go to drop point 2.
Is this hand line completed down here?
24D cells to the mark, please.
The infrastructure is in place for an assault on Barclay. That's the name given to the Lassen fire. In just 2 days, the base camp is up and functioning to serve over 2,000 firefighters. In order to reach the fire zone, crews will travel for 2 hours across a network of Forest Service roads. It should land them within a few miles of the flames. It will be a hike from here.
Is this drop point 2?
This is actually a luxury. A lot of the fires are in such remote areas, only a helicopter drop could get a crew close enough to do their work. The terrain of the Lassen forest is steep and rocky. Bulldozers are only able to cut fire lines so far into the mountain. The rest have been done by hand. Evidence of the fire is everywhere. Just last night, this line was breached by the flames as they took off on a roll through the canyon. The climb into the fire area is tough in the sweltering summer heat, and the weather is threatening to cause some problems.
It's really dry. They're lucky they haven't gotten the winds. They get the big winds and all these canyons will be gone.
Hotshots need to secure this area to make it possible for a backburn. It's a race against the changing weather.
Now we're kind of up against the weather here. Right now we can pull this plant off tonight by burning this. We have the winds in our favor. We'll be able to do it. And they're predicting the winds to shift tomorrow. If that's the case, we'd have winds right in our face. The fire would just run right across this line. So we're hoping we can hold out till tonight when the humidity comes up a little bit. Be a little more in control of the situation and burn this off.
This is an important line for the hotshots. Barclay has been a hard fire to fight because of the steep, narrow canyons in the Lassen forest, and gusty winds have kept a thick smoke hanging overhead. Right now, the fire is over this ridge, and the hotshots are going to dig in and try to hold the line. If at all possible, they must turn the fire back on itself here and win a war of containment. Deer Creek is located in the bottom of the valley, an added bonus for the helicopters. Fires like this one are completely unpredictable. The extreme heat and low humidity can ignite dry grass and brush in the lower levels of the canyon walls. As the fire moves upward, it gains momentum and creates powerful gusts. And fanned by any wind that comes up throughout the day, the fires in these canyons become a torrent of flames shooting up through the stands of timber along the ridge. These hotshots don't fear fire the way most of us do. They understand the power. But no one can control the weather. That's why they're so cautious here in Lassen. Something as simple as a wind change can turn a controlled backburn into Dante's Inferno. And once on a roll, the flames are impossible to stop.
There's been a lot of situations where it's been, nip or tuck, where we've had to run or sit in the safety zone, or just get messed by a rock or a tree, or a helicopter has problems or something. But no, you can't be prepared to get burned over. It's just something you just assume is never going to happen to you.
My name's William, and I was a drug addict, but I don't think. I was just focused on getting high and that's it. The things that I used to enjoy, I didn't even care about anymore.
I used to steal from my parents, and it affected my relationships with everyone in my life.
While in the midst of the largest drug epidemic in our nation's history, the government's impending changes in health insurance could eliminate addiction treatment coverage. Now, a free hotline has been established to provide free information on admittance to a treatment center that's right for you. And now, there's a new way to call. Just dial *** 135 on your mobile phone to speak with a representative.
You can't quit drugs on your own. You have to find somebody to help you. You have to make that call. You have to take that first step. Once I was in treatment and started feeling better again, I started picking up my old hobbies, connecting with old friends.
Reach out and call for help.
Dial *** 135 on your mobile phone.
Hey, it's Ava again. I've been watching the clock all day, looking forward to when I can hop on the line to meet someone local and laid back. It's Amelia here, and I just got out of a relationship, so I'm looking to meet someone who doesn't want anything too serious.
Hey, I'm Chloe, and I'm looking for a chill guy who I can really connect with. Send me a message if you know how to hold a conversation.
Real local singles who want what you want.
I would get muscle cramps easily 4 or 6 times a week, indiscriminately. Could be out of my sleep, could be while working. And then I learned about this product called TheraWorks Relief. With TheraWorks Relief, I have never had a cramp anytime during any of my very long days. TheraWorks Relief has made my workday muscle cramp free. Period. End of sentence.
TheraWorks Relief is my choice for preventing and relieving muscle cramps. Make it yours too. Get TheraWorks Relief today at TheraWorksRelief.com.
Burnovers do happen. Sometimes the explosive forces send flames racing, and all firefighters can do is lay down in a small shelter and let it roll over them. It was a burnover that killed the 14 firefighters on Storm King Mountain. It had been a small, inconsequential fire that nobody was too worried about. A sudden wind shift sent flames racing, and the group of hotshots were trapped. Those who did survive the experience said simply, "Hell caught us." But Storm King Mountain was not the only burnover out of the season. Some of the Prescott hotshots were caught while fighting a blaze in Arizona.
I was unloading tools like a typical fire, what I usually do, and getting everything set up for the rest of the crew to come up. And we started burning bad. You could tell the smoke was getting all thick and heavy, and the wind was picking up. And so we tried to burn a patch off the arm right there. And the burn wasn't going real well. The winds were real swirly, and that's when Kurt decided to, Dwayne started making decisions to move.
Once we left the hell spot, I knew where we were headed, at least in a general direction, which would be the safest way for us to get into a safety area, or at least get around this oncoming wall of fire. We had to drop everything we had except our fire shelters and our pack.
It so rapidly went to hell on us. When we first started moving, we didn't feel like there was a threat, and then things started getting a little bit worse. We moved a little bit faster, started shedding tools, and at the end, it wasn't a panic type run, but it was moving as fast as we could.
Kurt took a moment to look back behind us, and I've seen fear in people's eyes, fear of dying. And at that instant, I saw it, and I knew that he knew he was in grave danger. At that point, it was time to make a stand or we die.
We got to the area that we were going to deploy, and we all got in the rocks, I should say, and Dwayne was watching, and kept on asking. I go, "Good time to go now," because I couldn't see the fire from the area I was at. And Dwayne said, "Yeah, it's time to do it. Let's do it now." And that's when Kurt said, "Yeah, pull." And so we pulled and opened up the fire shelters, and we got in them.
The heat was just incredible. We were totally saturated with sweat. It was in the 90s that day. And when we crawled into our fire shelters, even my leather gloves were soaked with sweat. When the wall hit us, and it sounded like a freight train coming over your head, I was instantly dry from the heat. And the techno guys that looked into everything were saying we took temperatures on the outside of the shelters in excess of 700 degrees, maybe even over 1,000 degrees. And inside it was a few hundred.
Then you could see a light, and it started to kind of glow inside of the fire shelter, a little orange glow, and then the heat got really bad. It was hurting to breathe. I mean, it was real painful to breathe, and that's when we probably lost oxygen. We were figuring probably 2 minutes. We went without oxygen. It was just it's hard to describe the pain because you couldn't really breathe. You're fighting for something to come in, but if anything did come in, it was painful because it was so hot.
The urge is to get up and run, find some place where there's air. And if you do that, you're going to be instantly dead. One blast of the superheated air, and your lungs are cooked, and your skin's going to melt off you.
Think about maybe just passing out. You wish you could knock yourself out. And I was thinking about just smashing my head against the rocks. Maybe I'd wake up when it was all over with because it was just getting bad.
The self-control it took to stay in the shelter and tolerate all that, and the way Brian described just wanting to pass out seemed like the best option at the time, because then you'd either wake up and be fine, or it wouldn't matter.
We kept on talking to each other while we were in there. Dwayne would yell, how you hanging? And Kurt would say hanging, and I'd reply hanging, everything's good. So we tried to save our, air, whatever we had.
And throughout this ordeal, we stayed in contact. I did not want anyone to die, myself included. My primary concern was, let's get everyone out of here, and let's not get anyone hurt. I was talking to AirTac at the time, which sort of gave us a little bit of comfort. But the last thing I heard as the fire went over top of us was, how's it look from up there? And his last words were, it looks like hell. And I told him, I said, well, it's a whole lot worse down here. And they didn't think we made it.
Hey, somebody redecorated while we were gone. Planted a few new trees in the lobby.
Kurt, Dwayne, and Brian survived the burnover with little damage. They are also victims of the war on wildfires, left to defend a forest that has gotten out of control for decades. The Barkley Fire in California and the Blackwell and Corral fires in Idaho were extinguished with no loss of life and very little loss in personal property. And it's a good thing, according to experts, considering the poor condition of America's forests. Every fire season brings a more volatile situation where any spark can turn into a disaster. It seems the only solution is to find a balance between an ever-expanding urban interface and a healthy forest where fire can be part of its natural condition. I'm Bill Curtis. Join us again next week for another episode of Investigative Reports.
Prosecutors. Next.
Ruthless gangs rule the streets of Chicago, selling drugs and leaving a trail of violence and death in their wake. One gang numbers 30,000 and generates $100 million in revenue per year. It will take the combined effort of the Chicago police, 5 federal agencies, and a determined assistant U.S. attorney to take back the streets. In December 1992, Assistant U.S. Attorney Ron Safer took over the federal investigation of the Gangster Disciples, the most powerful and ruthless gang in Chicago.
I was a part of a team of agents and officers who went out there and were real heroes in their community. They did the job day after day, night after night, week after week, away from their families, doing tedious work, dangerous work, the work that builds the type of prosecution that changes a city, literally, changes the lives of people in the city.
In 1992, the city of Chicago was under siege. Vicious gangs turned thriving neighborhoods into wastelands. Leading a federal drug enforcement agency investigation into gang activity was Agent Rick Barrett.
Well, Chicago's always been a place where there's been a lot of gang activity, but at the particular time crack cocaine was first hitting the streets of Chicago. The drug is very powerful, very cheap, produced a lot of income, profits for the gangs. Associated with that activity, of course, a great deal of violence. Murder was at an all-time high in Chicago, and crack cocaine was flooding the streets.
Chicago police worked to stem the tide of violence. But the lure of crack cocaine and the easy money that it brought fueled the gangs. Gang crime Sergeant Jim Darling saw firsthand their effect on what were once peaceful neighborhoods.
For people in the neighborhoods, it was a constant fear of being shot or hurt, killed. These gangs had a stranglehold on these neighborhoods that made good people afraid to come out the street and to live a normal life.
The gangs brought with them more than their share of casualties. Anyone caught in the crossfire of turf wars fell victim. Police were fighting a losing battle. DEA agent Rick Barrett.
Just when you think they're gone, you come to work the next day, and they're all back. And it's just kind of a vicious cycle of pushing them from one street corner down to the next street corner, from the Englewood district down to the Gresham district, out to the suburbs, and back again. And they're always present on some street corner with an open drug era market. And the police have the toughest job in the world. I mean, their job is to keep the streets safe.
But with every gang member the Chicago police arrested, 2 more were waiting to step up. In late 1990, the DEA investigation began to focus on one gang in particular, the 30,000-strong Gangster Disciples. Mary Hodge worked with Rick Barrett on the DEA task force.
You have to understand that there was no starting point when we began the investigation. It was very little at best. We had one informant who was providing historical information about the Gangster Disciples and their hierarchy. He gave us the starting point, some names, and we began to follow up on those names.
Based on any information they could find, investigators used surveillance cameras to videotape drug deals taking place. But the tapes revealed little about the key to the gang, its leadership. Barrett's investigation was stalling.
We had several plates spinning at the same time, and actually we were going nowhere fast.
The investigation needed a fresh approach. The DEA turned to Assistant U.S. Attorney Ron Safer.
After I became involved in this case, saw the amazing grip that the Gangster Disciples had on the community in Chicago, saw the huge damage that they were doing in the city of Chicago, I wanted to do something about it along with the team.
Safer learned the Gangster Disciples were one of the richest, most deadly gangs in the country. Gangster Disciples were notorious for killing members who betrayed their code of silence. In Chicago's poorest neighborhoods, they used boys as young as 8 years old to carry their guns and drugs. Barrett knew the key to breaking the grip of the gangster disciples was to take down the gang's leaders.
Our focus from the beginning was on the leadership of the gang. One of the unique aspects of this investigation was the target was already incarcerated.
Larry Hoover was one of the 9,000 gangster disciples in the Illinois prison system. He was convicted in 1973 for murder. Investigators believed he was the ranking member of the gang, directing its activities both inside and outside the prison.
Quite frankly, there were a lot of people in DEA and outside of DEA that conceptually, I think, had a tough time understanding why they were targeting somebody who was already incarcerated.
Even though Larry Hoover was in prison, Ron Safer believed he was as much a threat to the community as if he were out on the street.
We knew that Larry Hoover was communicating with the gang leaders on the street. Because one thing everybody was agreed on, everybody we talked to inside the gang, anybody we talked to who had observed the gangster disciples, Larry Hoover was calling the shots.
Ron Safer met with investigator Mary Hodge to develop a strategy. During a federal drug conspiracy conviction, which carries the penalty of life in prison without parole, they needed more than witness testimony of the gang's violent acts.
I wanted to have a case that we could build that was unassailable, that would be on paper, where it didn't rely on some witness telling the truth. It relied on the words of Larry Hoover and his co-conspirators themselves. To do that, we focused on the drugs, the raison d'etat of this gang, not the violence, the money.
Safer ordered highly sensitive sound equipment brought in to separate Hoover's calls from those of the other inmates. But investigators realized Hoover never discussed business over the phone.
Come please.
From the Vienna Correctional Facility, he didn't have to. Investigator Mary Hodge.
Well, at that time, Vienna resembled a college campus. It was a minimum security facility. It had no fences, no walls of any type. It was a beautiful place.
Safer's investigators learned that Hoover stayed in touch regularly with his gangster disciples on the street. He had many visitors and was under little scrutiny. Prison logs revealed that Hoover's visitors were often gang members using aliases. The prosecutor needed probable cause to record Hoover's personal visits. He needed an insider with details of the gang. Finally, he found the right one. Early in 1993, in Decatur, Illinois, a gangster disciple named Charles Jello Banks made a drug sale to an undercover control working with the police. The arrest signal for the waiting federal agents was the raised trunk of the car. Charles Jello Banks was arrested and charged with the sale of narcotics.
Oh, you was in on it.
As part of an effort to get gang members to become informants, investigators met with Charles Banks. Knowing it could mean death, Banks agreed to defy the gang's code of silence. He told the prosecutor he had never met Hoover, but knew about the gang's internal structure. Banks gave Safer what he didn't have: key information on the gang's current organization and activities.
Larry Hoover devised, while he was in prison, a structure that would mirror a corporate structure. He placed himself at the top as chairman of the board of directors. Immediately beneath him was the board of directors. Approximately half of those members were incarcerated, and they controlled the prison system. Half of them were unincarcerated. They controlled the gangster disciples' operations on the street.
Banks' information supplied Safer with the probable cause he needed to secure a warrant to monitor Larry Hoover's private conversations with visitors. It would not be easy to penetrate Larry Hoover's domain, the prison he had come to rule. Safer and his team knew that standard surveillance techniques would be ineffective. Barrett came up with an idea.
You know, I started thinking about it, and a little light bulb went off in my head, and I thought to myself, bugging a visitor's pass, you know, maybe that's not such a crazy idea. I wonder if that could be technically possible. And let's get the group in here and let's brainstorm this.
The prosecutor went to the deputy director of the Illinois State Department of Corrections.
That's right, we have a base outside the prison.
He wanted to create prison visitor badges that could be outfitted with tiny listening devices.
What they said was, you create these visitor badges, and we'll implement them at 4 separate institutions so that nobody is terribly suspicious. Because if you introduce something new to a prison system, the prisoners will be quite alerted to the fact that there's something up. And they said, you need to put these badges in for a period of time before you can do anything. Because you're going to get some chewed up, some destroyed, somebody searching through every inch of those visitor badges.
Safer's team began tape recording Hoover's conversations in October of 1993.
Hey, what's up, Shorty? Hey, good to see you, man.
The conversations were recorded in Chicago, 350 miles away. But transcribing the tapes was a painstaking task.
The first thing that became apparent was these tape recordings were very difficult to hear. There was a lot of background noise, a lot of distractions, and of course, Larry Hoover and his visitors weren't screaming out the conversations about this illegal activity. And yet, we could hear it. It was tantalizing. They talked all about how the gang was making its money, directions from Larry Hoover about who would run the operation, directions about where the drugs would go, who they should get the drugs for, everything you could imagine.
Six weeks later, the bug was discovered by one of Hoover's visitors. The recording stopped. Of the 55 hours of tapes, only 4 hours showed incriminating conversations between Hoover and his high command. The tapes revealed the scope of the gangster disciples' drug empire. But to stop Hoover, the prosecutor still needed to connect the gang to the drug money. And to prove that Hoover was personally responsible for the gang's activities on the street.
Hello, I'm John Walsh. We need your help to capture this fugitive. The FBI needs your help in tracking down Craig John Oliver, who pled guilty to defrauding over 60 people out of $2.5 million in the Washington, D.C. area. Oliver enjoys the North Carolina coast and may be remodeling homes there. If you have any information, call the FBI at 202-278-2000.
Look at all you've accomplished so far. Work, home, family. But with everything it took to get what you worked for, doesn't it feel like you've earned more? We're AARP, and we couldn't agree more. We're already helping over 37 million members get more of what they've earned. Now it's your turn. How much do you spend on prescription eyewear and prescription medication? You can save 20, 40, even 60% or more. Money-saving discounts make dream travel an affordable reality. You'll get great savings on groceries, but with amazing discounts at your favorite restaurants, you'll want to eat out more. You can even pay less to go to the movies. Call or go to joinAARP.org. Join for just $12 for your first year. Benefits start as soon as you get your card. With our mobile app, you're always connected to events and activities right in your community. You'll get comprehensive health and wellness resources, including access to Medicare supplement insurance. When it comes to help caring for your family, you can count on our support. Want a secure retirement? We'll give you financial tools. Want to avoid identity theft? Our Fraud Watch network is 24/7. And if you're counting on your Social Security benefits, no one fights harder to protect what you've worked for all your life. Call or go to joinaarp.org. Join for the special price of just $12. Not $12 a month, $12 for a full year. That's a 25% savings off the regular price. You'll start saving on all your favorite benefits. Join today, and we'll also send you this smart Bluetooth speaker to enjoy music anywhere in your home free. We'll also include a free second AARP membership for anyone in your home and a subscription to the award-winning AARP The Magazine. You won't find this mix of benefits anywhere else. You've worked hard. Start enjoying what you've earned today with AARP. Call 1-800-616-5650. That's 1-800-616-5650. Or go to joinaarp.org.
Test your knowledge on how to be safe by taking the Crime IQ test.
Call 855-844-8444 now.
And you'll be entered for a chance to win this month's $1,000 cash reward.
In Chicago, Assistant U.S. Attorney Ron Safer was building a drug conspiracy case. His target was Larry Hoover, a convicted murderer who controlled the 30,000-member Gangster Disciples from behind bars. Safer had taped hours of conversations between Hoover and his high command. But it wasn't enough.
We didn't have the drugs. We didn't have money. We didn't know how things ran on the street. It was a dry conspiracy, and those are very difficult to persuade a jury that.
The prosecutor turned to the Chicago police.
Nobody knew this gang like the Chicago Police Department, and specifically the gang specialists in the Chicago Police Department. So I knew we had to get the police involved if we were going to build this mountain of a case that I felt was essential to build.
Gang crime Sergeant Jim Darling informed his team they would be working with the U.S. Attorney's Office in an effort to bring down the incarcerated leader of a gang they encountered on the streets every day. The team hit the streets, gathering evidence and reporting back to prosecutor Ron Safer.
The Chicago Police Department knew precisely where the Gangster Disciples drug spots were. What the police department did was gather evidence for us of these drug spots. They would go in, they would make undercover purchases, they would film these drug spots, and that was great evidence so that the jury could see with their own eyes this mundane process of selling bags of crack cocaine or heroin, $10 at a time.
Ron Safer explained to his team that all the Gangster Disciples' activities could be linked as a continuing criminal enterprise. Safer told them the gang's profits from the sale of illegal narcotics exceeded $100 million per year. He brought in federal prosecutor Matt Crowell to assist in the case.
And he literally walked around the room and he explained to all of us how we were going to be able to show that a person who sold a dime bag, $10 worth of crack cocaine, should be held to Larry Hoover, that he somehow ordered the distribution of those drugs, even though the two had never met.
Safer told the police that one of Hoover's many visitors, second in command Gregory Shell, discussed the purchase of a restaurant they could use to launder money. Shell's girlfriend, Sonia Irwin, would front the purchase. Irwin was a Chicago police officer and gang specialist. Safer had been tapping phones at a restaurant, the Shrimp on the Nine, for months. Irwin's connection with the Gangster Disciples shocked fellow Chicago police officer Jim Darling.
Sonia was tied in with the Gangster Disciples. That did not go over well with us naturally because you never want to see or have circumstances come about where you find out that a police officer, let alone a gang officer, is involved with the gangs, feeding them information, instructing them how the gang units work.
At 3 a.m. on the morning of September 27, 1994, the Chicago police coordinated with FBI specialists who set up surveillance equipment inside the Shrimp on the Nine restaurant. At 8 a.m., Gregory Shell arrived. Investigator Mary Hodge and her partner waited at their post.
I was monitoring the bug at a satellite office right across the street from the restaurant. Gregory Shell walks to the back room and points and sex. You don't have anything and you're not gonna have anything. And walked away.
The discovery of the surveillance equipment was a disappointment for the prosecution team.
Ron, Mary, he just discovered a camera in the microphone.
What? Could you see it? I mean, could you see the bug?
Sure, he walks into the restaurant, points the camera, and says, "You ain't got nothing."
Either there was a leak, or someone had seen the FBI specialist setting up the surveillance equipment. Safer's team was now at a critical point in the investigation.
DEA said, look, we are at wit's end. We must bring this thing down now. We don't have the resources to continue. At the end of 1994, we now had a lot of evidence. We had about 20 or 25 of the gang's top leaders. And at that point, I agreed. I said to the team, all right, we're bringing this down. And Jim Darling stood up and he said, if you do that, we've accomplished nothing.
Darling and his team knew the streets. And they knew what would happen if the investigation stopped now.
Because there's a guy named Pops Johnson, and he is the most...
Help defend the personal information on your devices from ransomware, spyware, and more. If there is an identity theft problem, our agents will...
So guys, call the police, ask the domestic violence department. Told me to do. Ask for a sergeant. He said he's busy and he'll call me right now. Just doing my due diligence.
This series of cases was particularly challenging for law enforcement because the rapist was concealing his identity from the victims. He wasn't leaving behind any fingerprints, and he constantly